Hey everyone, in this video we're going to show you how to create a news grid in the style of the Joe Biden presidential website. So if we look down at the area of his site, this was from the 2020 election, but he had a cool news feed here, which you'll see scrolls. So he's got images, videos right here, pretty standard text, and then it's got a date. So little white boxes that have a date, and you just scroll on through, and then of course you click see more to go to the area of the site that has all his archives. But we're going to do this little scroller, and we're going to accomplish this using WPGridBuilder. So let's jump into it and show you how you can do the same thing. Just to start off, I'm here in the back end of the website, and I just wanted to show you some of the plugins I've got running in this standard WordPress install. So I'm running this on a local, you see here, gridbuilder.demo.local. I'm running this local, so it's not out there on the web, and I am running a couple premium plugins, but other than GridBuilder, which is obviously what we're developing this in, you don't need any of these premium plugins. I'm using Hydrogen Pack, which I really like. There's a link to all these plugins down at the bottom. Some of these are premium plugins. I'm using advanced scripts, which allow me to add certain things. Like over here, I have some Oxygen templates that I can see right here in the menu dropdown, which makes them easily accessible. I'm using Hydrogen Pack, which lets me copy and paste things real easy in the Oxygen builder. So really, you don't need any of these. The only thing that you really need is WPGridBuilder, and of course Oxygen, because we're building this in Oxygen, which is a premium plugin. So really just Oxygen and GridBuilder, and you see I have the helper here for GridBuilder so that it integrates with Oxygen. So really those are all that you need in here. And then we can get started going straight to the builder. So I'm going to hop back and forth between Oxygen and the Joe Biden website so that you can see that as we roll around, because what we're copying is this basically here. So we come back to the GridBuilder dashboard. You'll see this is a standard installation of GridBuilder. I don't have any grids or anything like that installed just yet. You'll see it's just asking me what I want to do. So we're going to go through all the settings of GridBuilder and show you how to do this. So you can import data from GridBuilder, which makes this go a little bit faster, a little bit easier. You can just create a grid from scratch. So sometimes I find that it's easier to do that. So we can either go in and start from scratch, or you can import some data because there might be one that's close to it. Frankly, I find it easier to start from scratch, so that's exactly what we're going to do. So to start, we'll just click this green button here, Create Grid. And that's going to take us into the grid settings. Let's call this Biden Grid. And let's give it a Biden Grid class, just in case we decide to custom style it later, which we will have to do for a little bit. Click Save Changes there. Now we'll go through some of these other settings one by one. Let's jump right down here into Content Query. We can leave all of these settings default. This is going to query post types by default, put 10 in the list, which coincidentally is the exact number we need. And all of these other items are fine, so we'll just leave that as is. Media formats, we're actually not going to really use any media formats here, but we can leave these as default, totally fine. We don't have to worry about picking up on media first content or first media content. That's going to grab whatever the media content is in the post itself. We don't have to worry about that. Embedded video posters, if there's an embedded video inside, does it grab it and put it in there, open videos, lightbox, all this stuff we don't have to worry about. Default thumbnail, don't have to worry about. All these things we can just let them be. Over on grid layout is where we're going to start to get a little bit of editing here. So we can leave masonry intact. That's fine. Since we're going to use carousel, it doesn't matter as much. We do want this to be full width, right? So we want this to be able to go across the entire width of the section here. You'll notice that where it starts. Okay, great. So let's just come over here and we'll click full width. Horizontal order, fit into rows, equal height of columns. We're actually going to come back to this, and I'll show you why, because I want you to see what it looks like before that. So we can see how many he has here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's get rid of that first video. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's choose 5 to be on that first page. Maybe we'll keep the same for 1200. We'll drop it down to 4, and then 3 and 2. This looks good. Maybe even we'll just go, yeah, that should be fine for now. And then we'll save that. And then let's see where we are. Okay, grid carousel, and this is, we need to make a change here. So we do want this to be a carousel. Now if we were to stay on standard and just preview this, it's going to give us a preview of what this masonry looks like, right? And that's really not what we want. Obviously, we don't want that masonry look. And where we're at here with the carousel, it's going to give us some carousel settings here. So contain slides, yes, we want it to contain. We don't want it to loop through or show on either side of it. So we're just going to contain it to the ones that we want to see. And then here, slide arrangement, center, right, left, we'll click left, which is fine. Group cards by, we want one, so every time we move, we want it to move by one card. It is draggable, and then free scroll, which, so draggable will let us use our mouse to drag it. Free scroll is going to let us flick without aligning end-to-end positions. So you'll see here, this enables content to be freely scrolled and flicked without aligning slides to an end position. So let's keep that there, and let's just click Save Changes, and now let's see what it looks like. So now it's aligning everything. This is nice. This is what we want it to look like. Now, one thing you'll notice is this kind of choppy top to bottom, and you'll notice, excuse me, that these are all equal heights, right? So what we want to do is change this, and that again is in the grid layout area, equal heights. And if we click preview, you'll notice that those heights have been standardized, which is good. And don't worry about the images we're previewing here. We're going to change that when we get to the cards themselves. So this is in good shape. Let's give it a quick save. And let's head down here. Okay, so carousel. We're all set on the carousel. And let's see the grid builder. Okay, great. So now we do want arrows. So you'll see here, Biden's got arrows kind of over here on the left and on the right. Okay, great. Let's take a look at how that looks here. So we could, for instance, come over here. If we were to put these here in the left and right, you'll notice that that shows up outside where the actual grid is. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So it puts the arrows way left and right, right? And that's not exactly what we want. It's kind of on top. So let's try to get these on top. So we can move these in here and do that. You'll see here it sticks them all to the left. We can click all to the right or in the middle. For now, let's put them in the middle because we're probably going to have to do some custom styling there. But let's hit Save Changes. Let's preview that. That's much more like what we need. Images or the cards all the way left and right and this above it. So I feel like we're in a pretty good spot there. Okay, now let's look at the card styles themselves. We don't have any cards and we don't want to import all the card demos. So eventually we're going to have to add a card. We don't have to worry about animations, at least not for now. And these are different animations for the cards coming in or going out. I don't think we have to worry about that. We don't really need any big loading animations here, spinners, blurs, things like that. We're not using images, so we don't have to worry about that. And then in terms of custom CSS, we may use custom CSS. We'll come back to that in a moment. Right now we've got this called the Biden grid. Let's save changes. Now in Oxygen, we have a template, and let's edit this template. And if we refresh the page here, we'll see there's no grids, right? This is just our standard template here for the archive. So let's go ahead and edit this archive template in a new tab, and let's click Edit with Oxygen. Now, I did this in a previous template just to speed things up here, but what you will see is we have a section, and then we have the WPGridBuilder grid inside Oxygen. So you'll see here I just added a section, and then I just added a grid, but if we want to do this from scratch, I'll show you just adding a section. And then we'll want to make sure that this section does not get jammed with your page width, but goes full width. So we can keep this as horizontal or vertical, it doesn't matter. We could center it, and then you'll see here it's got the section tagged with section, which is fine. In the advanced, we do want to make sure that we have size and spacing, and we want to take this off page width and make this full width. So we'll save that. And then let's come in here and let's add a grid. So we'll just type grid, and we'll put that in the middle, and it's going to allow us to select the grid. We'll choose the Biden grid. This is our archive, so then we'll save that. Now let's refresh this and see what it looks like on the front end. There we go. So we can move back and forth between these. We're making some progress. The only problem is we have images showing, and we don't want images, and we don't have any titles or date. So that is done with the card. So we can go into the card section. We can import, just like we did with grids, we could import some demo cards, but we don't want to do that because there's too much styling and other defaults that we would be bringing in. Okay, so let's go ahead and click the Create a Card button, and it's just going to create a sample card for us. Now, we don't want media, and this area up here that's in blue is the demo or the default for media. So we're just going to come here on the side here in the general layouts, and let's name our card too. So we had a Biden grid. Let's call this one the Biden card. Okay, great. Now let's just save that, so we save that title in place there. We can leave the card alignment to vertical. If we choose horizontal, you'll see that it moves that over. And it doesn't give us the ability to get rid of the media, right? So that's kind of messing us up there a little bit. So we'll just click keep it on vertical, which is the default. Now we want content in the top, bottom. We'll just leave that for now. What we do want to turn off is the media. And you'll see we have two areas now, which is perfect for what we need. So the rest of these we can leave card width. Don't worry about it. It's not going to come into play. That's going to be controlled by the columns we created earlier in the grid. Now for blocks, we're going to drop in a title and we're going to drop in a date. And we're going to have to click them or just move them around. So on the top, we have the title. On the bottom, we have the date. Now if we save that, we're in good shape. Now, we're going to want to refresh this every now and then. So I'm going to want to make an edit, because if we just come back to the front end and look at this, you'll see that nothing changes. And that's because we haven't changed our grid since we created it to recognize this card. So let's just go back to the grid real quick and let's edit the Biden grid. And if we go down here to card styles, it gives us the ability to browse cards that we've created. And here's the Biden card. That's the default. So if we were to save that, we can come here and refresh that, and now we're getting our edited card. So we're in good shape. So now we can go back to the card and start editing this again to make it more like what we're looking at for the Biden. So let's take a quick look at this. We've got, it looks like a serif font up top with a darker blue and a sans serif down below in a lighter blue. So let's just quick grab that color, spec this, and let's try to grab that color. And it's the H3. Let's see what color we have here. There it is. Okay, so we'll grab that. And let's go to our card. So we're going to click on the card. It's going to open up the information block, and we're going to go over to, we can set this. It's set to auto, and we're okay on that for now. First thing we're going to do is go over to the font. And we definitely don't want it to be that heavy bold. And we also don't want it to be the default font. So let's try to find a serif font. We'll choose Georgia for now. That's great. You'll see it's a little bit dark too. Let's set it to left adjustment, and let's change it so that the titles are capitalized there. Each word is capitalized. That's good. The color scheme is fine. Let's set the color here to what we just copied. That kind of dark blue. That's great. I don't think we want it to be that big, and we certainly don't want it to be that bold. So let's try to change this over to maybe medium. Perfect. It's probably a little bit too big still. So let's come back and maybe change that size. So maybe instead of 1.625 ems, let's change this to 1.25 ems. That looks pretty good. Okay, now let's change this down here. You'll see it was a lighter blue, almost like a link blue. So we don't have to get exact over there, but we can leave that. I don't think we need semi-bold. We can click normal on this. The font family defaults to this sans serif, which is fine. It's a date. We don't have to worry about capitalization. And on the, let's just click the standard little blue there. That looks good. And then let's change this. Maybe we don't need 1em. I believe it was about 14 pixels. So we can set the pixels to 14. Great. Now, if we save those changes, go back to the front end. Here's where we are. It doesn't look like we left justified that. So let's click here. Even though it looks like it's left justified, it's not. So if we come over here and just click left, save those changes, back to the front, and then we should see that change up. Great. So now we have our cards here. It's looking pretty good. And what we have here, we need to have the white card background. But we're going to do that here in the actual card itself. So if you click on this block, it's going to show you all of these. So it's going to show you all the placeholders here. So what we want to do is grab the entire card, basically the card holder, the topmost level structure of the card. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the card holder, and we're going to change the appearance, and we're going to add some spacing to them. And this is going to allow us to space out and put some padding here. So let's just put 25 pixels all around. And let's make sure that the background of the card is set to white. Perfect. Now, we want to add some space here. So let's take a look on the front end. You'll notice that we've got a title, and there's much more space down here. And that's to give it room for a really long title. But you'll also notice there's just generally a lot of space there. There may even be some margin here. It doesn't look like there's a ton of margin or padding between these. But what we could do is, it looks like they're putting almost like a minimum here on the box. And also, doesn't look like there's too much spacing in between. We have, here's our class. We have an H3, and then we have P, which is a paragraph on the bottom. And some space between them. So why don't we set maybe a minimum height of these without worrying about too much space between them. It looks like maybe there's a little bit of spacing here. And it looks like our card's about 362 pixels. So why don't we just set ours to 360? So we're going to go back into the topmost card holder. And let's give that go to appearance. And there is no sizing for minimum. So what we have to do is go to custom CSS. Now we don't have to mess too much with all the different parameters. We just need to type in min height, and let's set this to 360 pixels. So you'll see that it gives us that minimum height, which is nice, which allows the title to grow in between there, right? So if your title is bigger than 360 pixels, it's always going to have that minimum. So that should grow naturally. And then we can click on here and maybe just give a little bit of padding or margin just in case. So we can go to the appearance and we can go to spacing, and let's add a little bit of bottom margin. So 20 pixels just in case they don't run over each other. Now you're not going to really see that now because we put that minimum height in place, but that should do it. Now let's go to the front end and let's refresh that. Great. Now we don't notice the white background because the entire thing is white. So let's take a look at the Biden site and see what he's using. It looks like he's got a little bit of a background color there. So let's inspect that. And sure enough, he does have a little bit of a background color here. And here's that background color. It's kind of like an off bluish white. So if we go back to our builder in Oxygen, we want to put that on the section here. So if we just drop a background color in there, perfect. Save that, come to the front and refresh. Now we notice our white boxes. There's our blue background, our white boxes, but it doesn't look like there's any separation there. That's controlled at the grid level. So let's go back to the grid, open that up in a new tab, and we'll edit the grid. And if we go down to Grid Builder, layout, sorry. Okay, so layout is where we control the different columns, and in between the columns is spacing, and this is really the padding or the margin between the columns. So Biden looks like he has a really thin, it's maybe 20, 25 pixels. So let's set ours to 20 pixels here. And then the negative one means it just inherits everything else. So as we drop down to these different levels of responsivity, it's going to inherit that 20. Let's save that. And let's look at the front end. There's our spacing. Great. So this is starting to look really good. You'll notice here, really hard edges. On the Biden side, he's got a little bit of a border radius, probably a 6 or 8 pixel border radius there. So let's take a look at that on our card. So in the card itself, we'll do this for the card holder. Go back to the appearance, and let's go to border. Now it's telling us, hey, for an order to apply border radius across this, you need to set the overflow property to hidden under position tab. So let's just put maybe 6 in there, and then let's go to the position tab, set the overflow to hidden, and we should see that pop here. Close that out. So you'll notice that this has been on there. And if we preview that, it's a little bit easier to see. You'll see a little bit of a border radius. I might want to change that border radius just a little bit more. So if we go to the card holder, go to appearance, go to border, instead of 6, I might change these to 8 just to get a little bit more of a border, and that looks great. So we'll save that, look on the front end and refresh that, and now we've got our borders, and we're looking pretty good here. So you'll see here, we've got these. If we look here, really good shape, and this scrolls between them. Now there are no settings in Grid Builder to move each of these arrows to the left and right, so we're going to have to do that using some custom CSS, and we'll do that next. You'll also notice on the Biden site, when we hover over these, there's a little bit of a jump up of the box, maybe 25 or so pixels on hover. So let's see if we can handle those two customizations as well. So first thing let's do, let's hop back into the card itself and let's add a little bit of margin. So let's go to the card holder, let's go to appearance, and then let's go to spacing, and let's add a little bit of top margin there. So there's our 40 pixel margin. Now there's a couple different ways we can do this. Let's look in the front. If we refresh it, you'll notice here a little bit more space there that gets added. So that's good. So that looks good. Now we got to cover the hover part. Now the way they're doing this is with a little bit of animation on hover on the way up. So what we can do here is a couple different ways. So we can animate this card. So if we go to the card holder and we do an animation, and let's have an animation where it animates up. Now you notice this disappears, right? And we want this on the whole card. And ease in, ease out is fine. A half second, that is fine. Starting opacity, let's kick it up to 1. We want the starting opacity to start from 1. We don't want it to fade in or fade out. And you'll notice it goes from the bottom all the way up. So let's just save that and see what that looks like on the front end. Probably not what we're going to want, right? So it puts all these other ones down. So it's translating that down further. So what we want to do is change this, right? So we don't want it. You'll see it's 100% y-axis. So it's basically translating it up 100%. So it's starting from 100% below. We don't want that. So if we put this at 0, obviously nothing happens there. So if we do -10, we'll see we'll get that position up. So let's try that and see what that looks like. So if we refresh that, see how that -10 drops it down on hover, right? So we don't want that either, but you're seeing how this goes. So we think it's about 25 pixels. So we're going to change the y-axis by about 25 pixels, and I think we're going to be in good shape with that. So if we refresh this, we'll see here, it loads, and then when we hover on them, it pops up, nice ease in, ease out. Let's get rid of this here. So there we are. So now when we hover on these, it's up by a couple. So we've covered that. We've covered this. Now we just need to take care of these little arrows up here. And let's take care of that now. So unfortunately, there's no way for us to change this in Grid Builder itself, right? Because if we come over to the grid settings and we look at the Grid Builder, we don't have settings where we can make this go to the right or the left. So unfortunately, we're going to need to change that with some custom CSS. So let's take a look at how this looks. Here we have them set to the right, and it looks like there's maybe a little bit of padding here, or it's not going completely to the edge of the screen. So let's see if we can mirror that somewhat. On our side, if we inspect these, we'll notice that they too have their own little boxes, right? So what we might want to do is see that they are listed as buttons, and then we have this area which puts them here. So here we have a button for previous and next, and what we need to do is separate them out a little bit. Okay, so we have the previous and next buttons here. We're going to jump into, let's let's just grab that class name for each one of those. We have prev and next, so let's just grab that. Here we go. Okay, that's what we want there. So in our grid, we want to go into the grid area, and then we're going to customize this grid because we don't have the ability to customize the buttons on the card. And unfortunately, if we actually look at the grid builder, there's no way to put those customizations here. So we want to do this overall for the customization. And let's put that here, button previous. And let's just change this to next. And we're going to get that here. Great. Okay, so we have our two classes we need to change. And what we need to do is change this position and make that absolute. And then the previous button we want to put at 0 left. And we want to copy this for the right button. And instead of left, we want this one to be right at 0px. Perfect. Okay, let's save that. Let's go to the front end, do a quick refresh, and see how that looks. Okay, so we've got our buttons to the left and to the right, which looks great. There we go. But we see we run into an issue here, right? Because the animation box and the carousel is now, because we set these to absolute positioning, let's inspect these and see what's going on. So if we look at the box itself, this is the actual carousel, and you'll see that the article, these are the individual posts, are overlaying now these buttons. So we have to take care of that. And the way we take care of that is by actually setting a height on these. So we go into what is the top area, right? Because we have the actual here, we have the top area, and then we have the layout, which is GridBuilder's cards, and we see that that's overlaying that. So we actually set an explicit height on the top area here. So we can look at that class here where our buttons are, and we can add a height, and we know that each of these next and previous buttons have a height of 48 pixels. So let's just set the top area to that same height. So let's set a height of 48 pixels, and that covers it. Once we do that, we're able to move these again. So we want to copy this and put that into our CSS as well. Save those changes, come over here to the front end and refresh, and we'll see we are able to move around again. Great. So we have the nice easing in and out, and this looks very much like our Biden boxes. So just heading back over to the grid, we can see this is working nicely. It looks a lot like the Biden site. If we wanted to, we could add a little header here for the latest or whatever the title was, but this is working good, looks great, and it's a great way to add a cool grid with some animation to your blog. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.